We have just come to the end of the second day of questioning of the undercover police officer Robert Hastings, who, using the cover name Rob Harrison, infiltrated the International Solidarity Movement, No Borders Network, State of Emergency Collective, Rampart Social Centre, and abused a woman we're calling Maya in a most disgusting, deceitful sexual relationship. I'm joined with Emily Apple and Kate Wilson. What have you made of what we've heard today?
I think, well, the whole of the day has been some of the most harrowing stuff that I have witnessed with this inquiry so far. And just his responses to what he did to Maya and stuff like that. I was physically cold. Like, he made me cry at times because he just has no empathy, no understanding. He is a very, very, very nasty, evil, dangerous person.
I mean, I feel like we've said this about a lot of the officers, but this guy is different. He really is. I mean, I wouldn't say we've heard a lot of harrowing stuff over the course of this inquiry. This was disturbing. It was kind of different. It wasn't just, oh God, that's really awful. It was just like, oh God, did he really just say that? And yeah, like right the way through. I mean, we've just come from less. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say less disturbing, but certainly less unpleasant and less harrowing section of evidence.
I mean, there was less sexual abuse. We can say that. That's what the level we're at. Yeah. So we've basically been taken through a great deal of his reporting. On the State of Emergency Collective and the Borders Network, a little bit on the International Solidarity Movement, looking at events like Sack Parliament, which I think I was at. You were at. I don't know. Were you at?
I was not.
No, not that. I mean, like you missed a bullet there, comrade. It was.
I am getting that impression. Yes.
Yeah, not one of the best days in central London, I can say.
But it's really interesting, the stuff about state of emergency, because it's something that it already came up with the questioning of Wellings, and we saw it in more detail today with the questioning of Rob Hastings, that this is an event that undercover officers from the SDS were actively trying to persuade people to come to.
Yes.
And what it looks like is that, so this was an event, first of all, that they should not have been actively persuading people to come to, because just attending this event was a criminal offence under the new SOCPA law, which was the whole point of having the event. So that's the first thing. The fact that they were even suggesting that people attend is effectively agent provocateur activity. It's not like any other protest where people can come along. And Hastings made this point over and over again about how people have free choice about what they do when they attend these protests. But this one, just showing up would have been a criminal offence. So suggesting that people show up was encouraging people to commit crime. For the people that did show up, I mean, I'm getting this from the evidence, you guys were there.
Yes.
I got no.
They were
Surprise.
encountered 800 police officers.
150 activists, 800 police officers. I mean, it was put to Robert Hastings that perhaps his reports in advance of the event might have led to the size of the policing deployment on the day. He says he couldn't say.
It's possible, but it actually feels to me that more like what happened was they tried to encourage as many people to go as possible because they had this intention to really heavily police the event. And they had the witness statement from Ben Leamy up on the screen because he'd put evidence in about Rob Hastings encouraging people to attend this event, which described it as an event that had a significant chilling effect on the movement. And it felt like the SDS were actively setting people up.
Yeah, they definitely were. And I think I mentioned it in my evidence. I'm pretty sure I did. Because there's a report that talks about that CO11 had planned a robust policing response to the event, and also that Harrison was aware of that, and that he knew that there was a high likelihood of arrest on that day, and yet he is still encouraging people to attend. And on the day, yeah, they kettled everyone in Parliament Square and sent in snatch squads, and they deliberately targeted organisers. And he
And
was,
you.
and me. He wasn't an organiser.
Organisers and you.
But he seemed to kind of, well, I mean, he just didn't recall or couldn't comment on anything, but that his reporting would have led to the arrests and the targeting of organisers, which it clearly did, because we know those organisers were arrested and there were questions around that afterwards. And again, it's this very, just with everything he said, I mean, everything has just been so disingenuous, it's been pedantic, it's been deliberately missing the point.
But as with all of the really arrogant officers, he's also given a lot away that I don't think he realizes he's giving away, particularly about the mentality of the special branch. Something that we haven't seen so much from anyone else. And yesterday I was speculating that might be because he went on to work for the Muslim Contact Unit, and that, you know, while a lot of the officers who were only in the SDS have kind of tended to recognize the you know, the political inappropriateness of targeting people involved in completely legitimate lawful policing, he's basically just been saying, if you're asking that question, it's because you don't understand how special branch works. Special branch wants all the information about these people. This is relevant. And he has this very clipped procedural way of presenting what are essentially massive political interferences, police interference in political processes, as though they are totally acceptable, like policing purposes. And that is a real insight into the mind of special branch that the other officers have kind of avoided giving.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also, I mean, we saw it a lot earlier on when he was going, oh, this person's associated with the ASM, therefore it's legitimate to report on them. We've also seen, you know, it was put to him that, you know, was it the role of the SDS to dissuade people from getting involved in protest? And he said, oh, it was to make protest less effective. Was part of their role. He was, I mean, which is admitting the disruption,
That's
right?
pretty massive.
Yeah,
just on its own. I mean, this is the stuff that just doesn't get picked up a lot of the time. But like, I'm listening to it, I'm just like, really? Wow, they think like that? Shit.
And I think as well, you know, he does come from a special branch background. That's where he came from, because he said yesterday that he knew me, or he knew my name before he joined the STS.
I mean, we originally called the SOS for a very short period of time.
Yeah, he also gave a very detailed description this afternoon of an event on a demonstration that happened in February 2003, which was long before he ever joined the SDS. Really quite clearly giving away that before he joined the SDS, he was involved in this kind of political policing. In another part.
Yeah, definitely. And also it was very telling because he was asked whether he could name, because he kept saying, well, you don't know what these activists might do, you know, like they might just be saying they're going to have this nice peaceful demo, but you know, they might go off. It
becomes a fluid situation. He hasn't actually explained how having somebody reporting on how crap an action is going to be beforehand could in any way prepare the police for the possibility that it then became a fluid situation where something interesting actually happened. Like
there was just no logical sense with it whatsoever.
He keeps saying it, but actually it's like, well, what is the point of view in those circumstances? What does that actually achieve?
No, absolutely. And then the only example that he could give when he was asked this question was an example from 2003 before he was deployed in the SDS. So he couldn't even give an example from his own deployment.
Yeah, I mean, his own reporting is remarkably thin. There is really not a lot there. I mean, given how much he was getting up to, he hasn't got a great deal to report. I mean, we were taking through a lot of his reports. We were also taking through a lot of his emails, stuff that he was sending on email lists, kind of encouraging people to go to demonstrations. I mean, the Sack Parliament one, but also other ones. Also, was saying that people need to be doing more, and we need to be doing more direct action. We could and should target more Israeli companies. And you know, this sort of like
he names the companies. He says like we should be targeting Carmela Gretzko, and people did subsequently target Carmela Gretzko, and he claims that, well, you know, that was just him being in role because somebody else had already identified Carmela Gretzko. but that's really not the point.
No,
like
but-
by
but
putting his
also
voice
that-
in.
Yeah, that language of that email as well. It wasn't just a kind of like, oh, this company's been identified, because he was just like, oh, I was saying it so that maybe we could talk about it at the next meeting. But it was actually quite sort of stirring language in that sense of
Yes,
like,
get
it's
off
all
your
talk about,
bums.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
doing
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
We've got to be doing more of this.
Yeah.
It was very, very directive, encouraging, inciting language.
There
It
was
wasn't
also-
neutral at all.
There was also quite a lot of him whinging on the email lists that people were not supporting his DJ events,
Yeah.
which chimes with my understanding of the personalities of most DJs, to be honest. But there was a clear, like, he was trying to organise these DJ events. People weren't really that into it. People had other things to do. In fact, he asks at one point, would people be into this? And somebody replies, yeah, in principle, but actually I've got something else to do that day. And he responds saying, thank you for the feedback, because I really think we need to be doing more of these big events where I get to play my records.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I mean, he pointed out to him it's the same weekend as WOMAD, and not only would that person be away, but lots of people away. It's not a good weekend, and he's like, oh. I mean, there's bit. I mean, he posts some things to the list, and then when he isn't getting reply, just posts again, going, "Does anybody give a fuck or what?" I mean, he is very petulant, and I mean, you can see the same character here today. He's.
He must have been a fucking. I mean, if he was any even a fraction of the pedant that we have seen on the witness stand today, he must have been a fucking nightmare to have meetings with. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And there were, I think, like some of the other reports, some of the excuses that he was giving. So in another of the reports was about sort of people from Brighton and London doing an action together. Like, no shit, people in London and Brighton know each other. And he was just like, that would have been a great value to Special Branch. And it was absolute bullshit. I mean, CO11 and the FIT teams knew that we all knew each other. Like, I got, like the Dicey Spot card has people from 2005, has people from Brighton on it. I've got criminals from the Smash Edo injunction case that talks about the links between London and Brighton people. Like that.
Well,
that
probably
was not
because, top class SDS officers like Harrison had filed reports on those things.
But yeah, there's this kind of like linking up of actors, and every single time it was just like, well, no, there was no disorder, but there might have been. And then it's one of those things that is both farcical, because it is farcical, but so deeply disturbing. And when we talk about our Article 10 and 11 rights, our rights to be on the streets, and our rights, like we have a fundamental right to organize protest without informing the police. We have a right to protest without being policed. And that is lost. Like it's just the kind of like, oh, there's a protest, so there has to be a policing response.
Bear in mind, this guy's deployed in 2004. By 2004, not only has the Human Rights Act been in effect for 4 years, but the Metropolitan Police have also produced the National Intelligence Model minimum standards for how intelligence gathering and policing is supposed to comply with the law. And that, like, to say that Hastings did not get the memo is really understating it. Like he sounds like something straight out of the 1970s, and I think that is the impact of, well, essentially of the Terrorism Act of 9/11. It almost feels like, the SDS, Special Branch during the Cold War had this subversion brief, and they were very self-important, and then they went through a bit of a fallow period where no one really quite knew what they were for, and it really feels like by the time Hastings is deployed, they've got back into their groove. They have found their mission creep, and they are following it right through. It makes me wonder what we're going to see when we get to the MPOIU, to be honest. I mean, this whole Brighton-London thing, it's worth saying that in 2004, the MPOIU actually had an officer deployed into Brighton and into Smash EDO. So, they knew.
That was what I'm saying. I mean, there were so many of those reports of events, which I was also at, that I know that there were MPOIU officers at, because there was one with our group. I know there's other SDS officers who were probably present on those days. I mean, it seems that so many of his reports mean, it's not just doubling up; it's tripling and quadrupling up. These events are very overly infiltrated, and in some cases they're quite small events. We talk about SAC Parliament. There's 150 activists at that, of which we can identify 4 undercover officers at least, if not more. And like so many of these events seem to be incredibly over policed, doubling up. That's not to mention the forward intelligence teams who are present. I mean,
Hastings actually whinged about the fact that he got chased by a forward intelligence team all day on the SAC Parliament Day, and claims that as a result of that he's unable to give any information about what happened on the day, apart from the fact that he had a camera right here in his face all day, which made me smile a bit.
I mean, yeah, but strangely enough, I can give a lot of information about a lot of events when I had forward intelligence teams following me all day. Did not affect my ability to notice what was going on the ground, and I'm not supposedly a trained person to observe what's going on the ground. But linked to that as well, he keeps claiming that he did not exaggerate any of his intelligence.
Oh, yeah, he absolutely insists if it's in his intelligence report, it is true. Fact. Yeah. Yes. Which, anybody who's been following this inquiry, I mean, it's just mad. There was at the first bit of what I would describe as light relief of the day was actually when we got
we needed it.
What's striking about it was the first bit of light relief was when we got taken back to actually one of the most awful things of the last 2 weeks, which was the allegations about MT having used a fake suicide vest. And it says a lot about the evidence that we heard earlier on that I just breathed a sigh of relief when that came up. It was like, oh good, we're back to the usual SDS awfulness and not this kind of added layer of deeply ingrained abusive misogyny. But yes, it was interesting that he actually filed a report on something innocuous.
A vigil
yes,
against the bombing of Lebanon.
And repeated Welling's intelligence. And when he was asked, did you get that intelligence? He was like, oh no, if I was reporting something, it was because I was reporting it from my own intelligence. And then it was like, well, no, you clearly weren't. Like this is intelligence about somebody who was from the globalized resistance group, had nothing to do with your targets at all. Like you're quite clearly just. And then it was like, well, are you repeating this in order to try and give some sense of seriousness or even like remote vague interest to this completely anodyne report about a vigil that you are filing? And he kind of fluffed the answer, as he did so many.
Yeah, he completely
I think it was still, I mean, I just really remember it really clearly because it was the moment where I went, oh God, okay, we've got a break. And then I thought, shit, this stuff was really disturbing me last week.
Absolutely.
I was, the racism and the fact of it at all. And then today it was like literally the least bad thing that we had to listen to.
Yeah, it was quite incredible. And I also think there's a follow-up question around that because again, that information that he had about MT then, whether that again came from his special branch days because he's added it in so casually, but it was before he was deployed in the SDS. And again, it's about that flow of information and intelligence between the SDS, between special branch, between CO11 and the FIT and the MPOU, and not looking at any of this in isolation because it can't be.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting because his recall of so the thing that he described was an attempt to break away from. He didn't specify what it was. He said a very large demonstration. It was the February 2003, the massive Stop the War demonstration that took place, and an attempt to get away from that demonstration and go to Grosvenor Square. Now, I was part of that attempt, and he described it very clearly and quite accurately.
Yeah, he did.
To the point where I was then looking it up and going, well, where's he got this intelligence from? He did not get that intelligence from being an undercover officer. And it's quite striking that he actually seems to have more knowledge about some of the things that happened when he was not an undercover officer than he does about the things that happened while he was an undercover officer, where his intelligence is really quite bland, most of it.
I mean, I think this is the thing that we've long said, that the SDS were just one part of the political police. They're recruited from a bigger pool of political police, which within special branch, who are, doing all sorts of other means other than like sending a person into our movements to have a full understanding of what people are doing and have a chilling effect on democracy in general. I think he's like. I think other former undercover officers who have given evidence have maybe been a bit more savvy about that and like kept that bit quiet and realized that that's not subject to the inquiry and they can get away with not talking about it. He can't help himself. Partially because he's decided he's had a complete memory blackout of any of the times when he was around Maya, so that he can't just suddenly pretend to remember all those other things that happened at the same time as that. So he's just relied on stuff from before then because he's allowed to remember it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do
we know whether there's going to be a private session tomorrow morning?
We don't know when. I mean, it was suggested by Mitting it'd be the first thing of the day. I got the impression from Sarah Hemingway that she didn't want to do that just by her reaction. I kind of feel that if that's what they were going to do, they would have told us in advance. So I would imagine it'll probably be like just before lunch, just after lunch, something like that.
It's a shame. I was looking forward to the lie-in.
Yes. Yeah.
have to let Sarah Hemingway do it how she wants. It's not.
I have to say, when you said that there was some light relief today, I thought you were going to refer to the very, very last thing of the day.
Very, very last thing was we had been so good all day. I do hope that Mitting recognises how respectful the public gallery has been all day in the face of some quite horrific evidence. There really was very, very little noise from the public gallery at all until the very end when Mitting informs Hastings that he is going to have to come back for another day, and Hastings responds, "Oh, that's okay. I'm here to help." And the entire public gallery just burst out laughing in this moment of relief, of just like, okay, we can ridicule him.
I mean, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but I mean, Mitting himself couldn't suppress the smile at that moment. I mean,
I presume that on your videos you have already discussed Mitting's intervention.
Yes, but feel free to mention it again because I think it's so significant.
It was so significant. I mean, first of all, it was significant just because of the utter change in demeanour. And I don't know whether Mitting will have noticed this because Mitting is used to being treated with respect, and he may well be used to women being treated with disrespect as well. But just if you watch just the section of video where he goes from talking down to counsel to the inquiry to addressing Mitting with his body language changes, the tone, most importantly, the tone of his voice changes very significantly. And Mitting asked him a series of questions, which counsel to the inquiry had already asked him about, several attempts to get him to explain. So his evidence has really gone on and on and on in answer to every single question about his abusive behaviour. He has said it was a two-way thing. It was a toxic, poisonous relationship. We hurt each other. Like he's really, his absolute hard line on it is this was a two-way relationship, and he is obviously completely blind to the fact that one part of that relationship was engaging in a genuine relationship, and the other part of that relationship, but even if you ignore that massive elephant that's like not only in the room but actually standing on your foot while you're listening to his evidence, you're still faced with the evidence about the relationship that shows him to have been a nasty, coercive, controlling partner, and her to have been an extremely vulnerable woman with massive self-esteem issues, who was self-harming, and who was being very clear and open and honest with him about that in email after email. And in the course of this, he repeatedly said, well, yes, there were two people involved in the relationship and we hurt each other. And at the very end, Mitting asked the question that, frankly, we'd all been asking. I mean, it was a real relief to see that, he'd heard it. And he said, well, could you explain? We understand how you hurt Maya. It's very evident how you hurt Maya. We've heard extensive, we've seen the messages.
All the evidence in the world.
All the evidence in the world. Could you, I'm struggling to understand how Maya hurt you. To which he replies, well, it was the guilt. The guilt really hurt me. And you can see that later on. And it's clear, again, we've said this before, but it's clear from the evidence that some very dark stuff happened in Hastings' own private life with his family. I suspect that is what is going to be dealt with in private, in the private hearing. But yes, it's clear that some very dark stuff happens, and he blames that on Maya, essentially. He blames it on, but
she made him feel guilty for the
she
things
made
he
him
did to
feel
her.
guilty, and that guilt damaged his mental health to the extent that he started hurting other people, is my interpretation of it. I mean, it's fucking bonkers, you know. And Mitting asks, and he explains this, and Mitting says, so, but what I'm hearing is that your behavior made you feel guilty. And he says, no. No,
she made me feel guilty.
She made me feel guilty, and that is what hurt. And Mitting actually, I mean, I don't know what view was captured on the camera, but Mitting actually went like that when he said it, and he stayed quiet for a long time, and then he was obviously like, no, I'm going to ask this again, because that's not okay, isn't it? I mean, it was really powerful. What was really powerful was that in the end, even Hastings' respect for Mitting slipped. And he was just like, well, if you don't understand it, then I don't know what else I can say. Like, and
I mean, yeah, and I just think it was an incredibly emotional. I found it incredibly emotional watching Mitting do that in such, and actually, you know, like, in a very calm, gentle way.
I mean,
you know, like,
absolute props to counsel to the inquiry, and absolute props to Mitting that neither of them have lost their shit at this man.
God, absolutely.
I mean, you know, the professionalism of Sarah Hemingway in the face of his contemptuous, pedantic.
Oh my God, I just could not do it.
I just couldn't do it. I would have lost my shit.
But the fact, you know, one of the surprises of the inquiry for me today was I was sitting there like going, go missing, which is not what I was expecting at all. But, you know, like, yeah, it is like he drilled that one home, and it was so needed. And I think it was just that kind of, when you've got someone who is that much of an abuser and is that much of a misogynist and has that much of a problem with strong women, and is so obvious in his contempt for counsel and the way he's addressing her, to have him then have to face Mitting, being so calm and pointed with him, that was, I you know, and obviously he had zero credibility by that point, but anything that he could have salvaged was lost in that minute.
I think it's really worth underlining that Mitting doesn't do this. He did it last week with Simon Wellings, which was like, that was a shock. The fact that he asked Wellings about MT, and he said that, you know, he believed the evidence from the other people. There was anything that he could say, and give him the opportunity to roll back his nonsense, which he didn't do. And that was like, oh gosh, he hasn't done that before. To do this, like to do it twice.
He did it with Thompson.
He asked questions of Thompson, but I think this was much more pointed.
But with Thompson, he did say, is there anything that you can provide? Is there anything that you can say that could in any way possibly counter the weight of evidence against the version of the story that you're giving me?
But I think he took a step further today by saying, you'll understand that I don't accept what you're saying. I mean, essentially, I forget the exact words, but he signed off by going, well, that's not good enough, essentially, which is something he had said to Simon Wellings last week, but cover name Simon Wellings, HM118. But, you know, the fact that we've got to this stage, obviously we're coming to the end. This is the last of the field officers being questioned by Wellings.
I really think that, we're getting to the last of them. He has started this process going, the police were amazing, doing a difficult job. You know, there might have been a few things maybe they shouldn't have done. And I think actually now he's got to the point where they were scum. And like, he actually has serious questions for him. I think this inquiry, I mean, who knows what it'll actually come up with in the end, but I think it has shifted how he sees them. And I think he is totally fed up with their lies and how they're presenting themselves, and that he's seen person after person from our side, from core participants who've come in and been very honest, been very open, have tried to explain our beliefs, why we were doing things. And then he has sat through bullshit from abusers and liars, and it is so obvious, and I think he is sick of it at this point.
And I mean, I have to say that it is really striking, and generally, I'm not the first person to say that all cops are bastards.
I am.
I know you are. I know you are.
Yes.
But I generally aim to be more nuanced than that. But I think the fact that not a single police officer has taken the stand in this entire inquiry, and we have been having these hearings for 5 years now, and in 5 years, 6 years, I don't think a single police officer, possibly some of the very, very early, like the woman who infiltrated Sandra, who infiltrated the Women's Liberation Front, and who basically said, yeah, if I look back now, I think there wasn't much point to my deployment, and yeah, I was being paid less than my male colleagues in order to spy on campaigns for fair pay for women. But we really haven't seen an officer take the stand and just be like, yeah, it was wrong, we were wrong, I've had time to reflect on it, and I mean, the attitude, I was really struck by this, but the attitude of Hastings was, in response to any questions about his questionable moral behavior, was basically to say, I am quite aware of where I'm not in conflict with my own morals and ethics, and I don't need you to tell me. And even if he would eventually say, well, actually, yeah, you're right, that was morally questionable, but his initial response to all those kind of questions was, I know exactly where my moral lines lie. And it's like you clearly just don't.
I am reminded, I must just on the thing with Mitting, I'm reminded of something which Simon Israel, the Channel 4 journalist, said to me the one time. He'd followed a lot of Mitting's work when he was in the immigration court. He said he is a contrarian, and he has, sat through cases, thought, oh, it's definitely going this way, and he's gone the other. So I mean, I think the three of us are not particularly bothered about what actually he comes out with in the end, because it's not about that. It's about the journey. It's what we find out on the way. But I wouldn't necessarily suggest that.
And I don't think I've ever thought we were going to get justice out of this inquiry, or what we wanted out of it anyway. Like that was never.
In all of the processes that we've been through, I never thought we were going to get as much as we did, and as we have, to be honest. So, but yes, no, I am anticipating that Mitting's final report on the STS is going to heavily rely on closed evidence in order to, at the very least, make it a bit of a shit sandwich.
I'm sure it'll cut both ways. Because there's too much overwhelming evidence of appalling behaviour that we've seen heard in open, but God knows what we've heard in closed, and God knows what he's believed in closed. When we started this, you said you're going to put me on a timer. That's not been the case at all.
I did not put you on a timer because you let me go to the loo before we started.
We've had a couple of comments. One just saying the man is an astonishing piece of shit. We all agree with that. Another, Rob Hastings is the evilest beetroot I've ever seen, and far too heavily pickled from years of boozing. Yeah, very clearly. Middings essentially said, you did it to yourself, was wonderful to hear. Yeah, it was definitely the high point of the day. We are back for another day tomorrow. In theory, I mean, we could even run for 2 more days, but I think it will be finished tomorrow.
It sounded like it's going to be finished tomorrow. I mean, after all, he's here to help.
Yes. I think there's going to be a lot of Rule 10 questions. How many of them actually get asked, I don't know. I've certainly got some that I hope some people put in. If they don't, I'll suggest them. But it will be then the last day of the field officers of the SDS at the undercover policing inquiry, which is quite a moment.
That is quite a moment. Yeah.
So join us from 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. There will be part of it will be closed, but the majority of it will open and be able to watch along. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, but just that it'll be nice, it'll be over tomorrow. But having said that, we've got issues with the fact that these officers haven't been given enough time. We had that issue with HN3, cover name Jason Bishop not having enough time, and we're already saying, oh, well, there's a lot of stuff for him to cover tomorrow, and that things might have to be cut down, or we might not get in our 10 questions. And I think that it's worth remembering that is, as much as we're kind of like looking forward to getting to the end of these sessions, it's actually a fundamental problem with the inquiry of how rushed these hearings have been and not giving these officers enough time. And I hope that if anyone from the inquiry is listening or wants to listen,
they're listening, they always listen.
Give the managers more time. At the moment, we've got managers scheduled for half a day. That is not good enough. We're going to have the same problems. You're going to get the same complaints again and again and again. We have waited a long time to get to these hearings, and especially with the managers, they need that time.
Yeah, there's so much that we've heard over the last, like particularly tranche 3, but I think over the whole thing, of officers saying that is not my department. I would not have known about that. You have to ask the managers. And they do have to ask the managers. If these are questions that it was felt were important enough to ask the officers, and these questions were being, these decisions were being made by management, that makes them more important, not less. You know, the police is a hierarchical organisation. If these decisions were being made by management, then these questions need to be re-asked. And I will be going through the transcripts and finding all the instances where questions were asked and the officers said, you have to ask my managers, and corresponding that to which managers it was, and passing that to the inquiry, because like I really think that it has to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. But anything else you'd like to add about today and tomorrow?
I mean, we're back tomorrow. It's grim.
It's grim.
It is really grim.
It's going to be particularly grim tomorrow because we're going to be looking at the post-deployment contact that Hastings had with Maya. That includes him re-entering into her life in 2014 after the inquiry had been announced, to ruin her life all over again. That is going to be horrible. It's going to be a whole set of the worst parts of today, just all over again, but more recent.
And I hope that we will also be looking at some of the we've heard a little bit today from the third witness statement of Ben Leamy. I imagine it is going to be published. It's worth a look. It is an analysis of Rob Harrison in his undercover identity Boogie Boy, posting on Urban 75, and a lot of it is quite disgusting. And you know, we heard some very little bits of that analysis today, but I'm hoping that a look into the personality of Boogie Boy and the impressions that he conveyed will be looked at tomorrow. And if not, then I'm sure we will be publishing them online.
Yes, absolutely. So join us from tomorrow. I'll be doing a preview video before the hearing starts, sort of about 9:45 they tend to be, sometimes slightly earlier. The broadcast will start about 10:10. There will be a closed session at some point during the day, but you will be able to watch along. It will all be broadcast on the Inquiry's YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. See you all again in the morning. Bye for now. Please like, share, subscribe.